share some of your stories, but maybe you guys can go around and introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Mickey Sobel. I'm a history major at Santa Barbara City College, and I'm about to transfer to San Diego State.
You're transferring to San Diego State?
Yep.
I'm Izzy. We're all in the same class. I go to Santa Barbara City. And thank you for being here with us and helping us out with this.
Well, thank you for asking me.
I'm Michael Anthony, and I'm an econ major at the City College. I plan to transfer down to USC, actually, next year. Not this year, but next year, as an econ major as well. And I'm from Orange County.
Where in Orange County?
Laguna Beach area. Like Aliso Viejo, pretty fairly new town. It was built in '93.
Laguna Viejo?
Laguna Beach.
Aliso Viejo. Beach I know, and I know Laguna Hills.
Yeah, Aliso Viejo's the town I live in.
Aliso Viejo.
Yeah, it's right in between those two towns actually, and it's fairly new. It was built in like '93, I think. The whole city.
It's a lot younger than I am.
My name is Liz, and I also go to Santa Barbara City College. I'm studying sociology, and I am a local here. I live in Goleta.
Glad to meet you, all of you.
Thank you.
So tell me what you'd like to know.
Well, start in the beginning. Now, are you a native New Yorker?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I was born in New York, and I lived there approximately the first 40 years or so of my life. Well, no, I didn't. It's not true. I mean, I was, let's see, when I was in 19 or 20, I went to live in Mexico and in France. And then, and from there I was working on the stage at that time, and well, I continued on with that. When I was doing a lot of work in Los Angeles, I lived in Pacific Palisades, which wasn't so happy for me because there weren't any freeways then, and it was a long drive at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to work at Paramount or to work at any of the studios.
So, what did you do? What did you do that you were...
I smiled a lot.
What did you do for a living? How come you were in LA?
Well, I was an actor.
An actor. Oh.
Have you been in a lot of movies? TV shows?
Yeah.
I've in one movie, I think my biggest part was in one movie, I fell off a bar stool 63 times.
Wow. And how come you were was the acting took you to Mexico and to...
Well, acting, and yes, and someone I was married to at that point, and that was Mexico and Villafranca in the south of France, and a few other places it took me to. I'm glad I got to go at an early stage in life because it was somehow easier then.
Easier to pick up in.
Did you start in acting? Did you start on stage in New York?
Yes. I started on Broadway. The way it was, I was a junior at Columbia at the time, and a cousin of mine who was, he was at that point the musical toast of Broadway, and he asked me if he told me that David Merrick was doing a new musical, and would I like to be in it? I said, I would like to, but I don't think I'm equipped for it. He said he will, because I know the kind of looks he wants, and then you're it. So that's how it started. Then I was a year on Broadway, then a year on the road, and then I formed a little variety acting. We were in we were based in Mexico City,
Oh.
and then and we traveled through Europe and through the various circuits in England and in France, Belgium.
What was your favorite role you played?
Pardon?
Your favorite role, your favorite acting
Well,
role?
that wasn't exactly a role. That was what was called a flash act in variety shows. I was in devil headdress and body paint, and I was dancing on a white drum, and I had 4 girls in the background and a bongo player. And
That's
And
awesome.
were you married during this time?
Yes, I was. First and second time I was married then.
Were they actresses?
One was an actress, the other one was a producer, and that was she was principally a producer in movies, and it worked for the time. It worked out.
Yeah. So, did you have any kids?
No,
No kids.
no. And I might mention that I was also very active in civil rights movements. And that was from early on because my family was. And so, I mean, at 5, I was put on card tables under the elevated trains in New York to sing the songs of the Lincoln Brigade. This was in 1936, to raise funds for the starving children of Spain. Spain was during the Spanish Civil War, and Madrid was under siege for over a year, and as a result, so the Franco and his troops had surrounded Madrid, and they had blockaded it well, and the only thing that was let through were these shipments of food for the children.
Wow, so you were involved from a very young
Do you remember doing that?
Oh, I remember very well. At 13, I went on the Southern Crusade for Human Welfare. I was through the South to for an anti-lynch law, because there were no anti-lynch laws in southern United States at that time.
And your parents were involved in this?
Yes, they were involved. I was involved with them and separately also. By 13 or 14, I was very active in that. I mean, I also, several things, well, they were important in a way at the time. This wasn't particularly civil rights, well, in a way it was. I mean, I was, for a year, I think, I stood in front of subway stations and handed out leaflets to save the 5-cent fare. That's a long time ago.
5-cent fare. That didn't work.
Sounds pretty dangerous to be a white person in the South promoting
Anti-lynch law.
human
Oh,
rights.
Yes, it was. I mean, at 13, I had the privilege of being stoned in Charleston and in jail in Birmingham for the night.
Did you were you in the Birmingham, with the Birmingham riots? When you,
Oh,
were you
this is
there?
long before the Birmingham. I think you're talking
Yeah.
about
Oh yeah,
the
the
60s.
60s, yeah. I'm
This
thinking
is in the
60s.
40s.
Oh,
This was in the
wow.
40s, and it was till we were there in the Birmingham jail, I think, for two nights, and then until this lady, Bella Absick, who was a leading civil rights lawyer, came down from New York and got us out of jail.
Wow.
What was that like, being in jail for 2 nights?
But it wasn't particularly pleasant. I mean, and all through that, I think I was on that for 6 weeks on the caravans there, and every city we stayed in below the Mason-Dixon line, and shamefully in Washington, because we were a mixed group, we had to stay in black hotels, eat in black restaurants. Washington was fully segregated.
What was your family's background?
What was my family? In which way?
Like, where was your family from?
Well, originally from France from my father's family was from Alsace-Lorraine, which
Both France and
was French and German. My mother's family was from Lyon. activity, and I also remember in that way, in ways of service to people, that when I was till I was 7 years old, we lived on the North Shore of Long Island, and then we moved into the city, and we had a house in Greenwich Village, and it was, but they were, the houses were contiguous. I mean, they were attached to each other. There were no separated houses in Manhattan, but there was what was called an areaway, and that was a set of stairs, cement stairs that was open, and a tunnel that went to the back of the house, and there, and the kitchen entrance, and that was kept open. Our kitchen was always open from 10 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night for people who needed to eat, because people were starving in the 30s.
So what kind of, being so young, your parents raised you to be aware of all these things going on around you. What kind of things would they say to explain what was going on at such a young age?
Well, they did explain the inequities. I can understand them for as long as I can remember, the inequities that existed at the time. They're somewhat better now. They're not as good as I would like them to be.
Right.
But in judging from what happened, if any of you were aware of what happened in North Carolina yesterday, with this governor who had brought all this legislation, and so on the steps of the State House, this delegation, the head of the NAACP and several other groups came there to protest these things. One of the things, like these were general things like the Medicaid is, while it's federally funded, is administered by each state.
Right.
So his new proposition was that 500,000 people be dropped from Medicaid. That they drop enormous percentage who are on disability, that they limit the unemployment. It was just dreadful. So these people, he refused to see these people, and then he ordered them away, and then he put them in jail. And it's a very sad reading. Why did we talk about that? That's now that I'm not doing that. I'm not in jail there. But,
How about World War II? Were you in New York City during World War II?
yes.
Were you there when victory was?
Oh, yes.
So do you remember the troops coming home? What was that like?
Also, then I used to, during the war, when I was 12 or 13, I played the piano, not the best piano player on earth, but enough to get by, and I used to sneak out of the house and play at the canteens during the war, play and sing at the USO canteens. And then a little later I was attached to what was called the circuit that went on them camp shows, and that was the USO circuit. And what was, to say wonderful, it's horrible to think that there was a war going on, but what was wonderful about it, it was the most wonderfully cohesive period of time in the United States. Everybody had a single purpose, and people were really wonderful to one another. It stopped at the end of the war, but everything, because things were rigid, everything was rationed. You had ration books to buy your shoes, to buy your clothes, to buy your liquor, to buy food, and also everything was under price control. It was an Office of Price Administration that created the prices for all retail goods and also for rentals, for anything like that. So living was, and when I say the cohesiveness of it, that everybody was united in the one purpose that was wonderful. I'm sorry it didn't last.
You said your family was involved in feeding people during the Depression. Was your family a big fan of the programs that FDR was putting forth?
Yes, we were big backers. We weren't involved with the Democratic Party. We were involved with the in New York State, the American Labor. It didn't exist out in New York State, but it had representatives in Congress, the American Labor Party. And that was very strong in New York State at that time, and it was probably the most liberal of the parties. And what else would you like to know?
Well, I always wonder, I see footage of the victory parade when the troops came home.
It wasn't when the troops came home so much. It was when the first it was Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, and everybody celebrated. Everybody, everywhere you went through the city, and well, I think through all cities, there were block parties. Everybody participated in the block parties, and it was a great celebration because we'd been at war for 4 years at the time, and then the VJ Day was a year later. The Victory in Japan Day was a year later, but it was the same thing. The same thing happened. I mean, the same celebrations for the peace.
How long do you feel like the cohesiveness lasted after that?
It didn't.
Just over then?
It lasted a little while, but it was not long. It was not long.
Have you seen different periods of cohesiveness in your lifetime?
No.
Not like then?
Not like that. I didn't feel there were any. Because what was eliminated during that time largely was the greed factor. And the greed factor returned, and people where the greed set in, and then that eliminates any cohesiveness because it creates that enormous competitive thing.
How about September 11th? Was there any relationship to that feeling of cohesiveness for a period of time?
Maybe for a week or two. I don't feel that it was. I don't feel that it lasted at all because it was such a thing of the question. I mean, there was so much controversy with 9/11 as to the question, who did it? There still is the question of who did it. Mm-hmm. It never was really established who did it. I mean, why did we hold Iraq responsible when all the people had Saudi Arabian passports? Mm-hmm. And I mean, so many questions about it, and the type of and the actual thing itself. And I've seen many documentaries showing that there have been incidents where jetliners impacted the skyscrapers, and never did the skyscraper dissolve. Mm-hmm. The Empire State Building was hit twice. The Pan American Building in Mexico City had a bad hit. The 2 floors were down to the superstructure, but they weren't. The buildings did not fall apart. Mm-hmm. So it's very questionable as to why. And also, when I've seen the various documentaries done, it looks much more like an implosion. The buildings sank.
Mm-hmm. Could you guys state your ages again, please, for us?
I'm 24.
I'm 19.
I'm 24.
21.
And when you were their age, what did you do to have fun? What was it like then? Like, what was on your mind? What was the best way to have fun?
What was on my mind? Mm-hmm. Well, by then I was on the stage, and then to me, what was the wonder that was lost? There was nightlife. Mm-hmm. And that was that was stunning and wonderful, the nightlife. And that was gone. That actually, what killed nightlife was network television.
Well, nightlife itself, what did it mean? Like when you finished your show and you were getting ready to go out, where would you go? What would you do?
There were always, in New York and all the major cities, there were after-hours clubs. And they opened up at midnight or 2 o'clock. And depending when the bar break was, they would open at midnight or 2 o'clock, and they would have reviews in them. They would have everything going in them, and it wasn't only in New York. It was in Los Angeles. Every major city had them.
So how late would people stay out? If they started partying at around midnight?
When I was working toward the end of my, how long was I working in nightclub? For 20 years, a little more than 20 years. And toward the end of it, I was only working in nightclubs because the network television by then had destroyed most of the, I think 40% of the legitimate theaters in New York closed, and the ones that were in other cities across the nation, there were none in so many cities after a while. The movie houses also closed because and it wasn't until Jerry Lewis did the thing of the small movie house, partitioning the large movie houses and making fourplexes and eightplexes out of them, that it was revived. So the nightclubs were the only, and so I was working all nightclubs then, and I used to.
What did you do when the 20 years were over? After you were done with that, what did you do next?
Well, when the work was becoming scarce, I started looking for something that would require the least training and that would have the greatest revenue from. So I became a court reporter.
A court reporter.
Yeah, and I did that for the next 20 years or so.
Any notable trials that made an impression on you?
Well, trying to think, because mostly they became very similar. The trials. I mean, it was just and I didn't do mostly. I did not do trials. I did patent litigation, and that was. Everything I did always kept me traveling. Patent litigation, you went all over the globe to take testimony. And the interesting thing about patent litigation was, there again, a small inventor never stood a chance, because patent litigation is very expensive, and so it's a question of who has more money to spend on the litigation. I mean, because the discovery of anything, it's very interesting. That part is very interesting, because you find that given the same circumstances, like suits between GE and Westinghouse on an electroluminescent bulb, would result in the fact that you'd go to the various laboratories, and people would, various scientists would come up with, we'd go through the journals with them and the diaries that they kept, and they came up with the same developments at about the same time.
Did you